In this video, we're going through some scroll saw troubles. Now, this was inspired by a comment put in one of our videos by yourselves, and we thought it was the basis of a really interesting video. And our theme, as you may notice from the title, is jumping woods. What we're looking at are the causes and some thoughts on how you can deal with the issue of wood jumping about while you're scroll sawing. Hopefully this will be useful, and especially so for any of you who are beginners. So let's get into it. Let's go through different causes and possible solutions for jumping wood while you are scroll sawing. So the first aspect that we look at when dealing with the issue of the wood jumping whilst you're scroll sawing is the installation of the machine itself. We recommend clamping the machine to a secure base, so bolt it to the base and then bolt the base to the floor itself. This will reduce vibration, which in turn will reduce the amount of jumping that occurs whilst scroll sawing. We also recommend having the machine adjusted so the blade is at a 90-degree angle. We know that some of you straight away will think, well, there are times when you're cutting at different angles, and that's fine. But in terms of reducing the jumping of the machine, we recommend using a set square to make sure that your blade has been adjusted at a 90-degree angle. The next factor to consider when it comes to jumping wood is blades. Now, there's a couple of aspects to this. The first one is making sure you've installed your blade correctly. Now, so for some of you that may sound very basic, but it's very important to make sure you've got that right. And even ourselves who've been scroll sawing a long time, we do still occasionally install the blade incorrectly. This will massively affect the performance of the machine and also affect the amount of jumping that is caused. We use a Hegner Multicut 2S, and there's a little guide on the side that you can use to check if you've installed the blade correctly. Depending on your machine, you can consult the manual, but just check that you have got that blade installed correctly, because this can be a cause of the wood jumping about. Choice of blade can also have an effect. So better quality blades will perform to a better standard. We use a Nikua No. 9 reverse tooth blade. We find it gives us a good quality finish. Make sure that you're using a sharp blade. A worn blade will not perform as well as a sharp blade. So that's another thing to consider when it comes to jumping wood and getting the best out of your scroll saw in general, is working with a nice sharp blade. Another consideration that could be causing your wood to jump about is the wood itself. Certain woods are more suitable for scroll sawing, and certain woods require different approaches when it comes to your scroll sawing. So for example, we use a wide variety of hardwoods. If we were using a wood like cherry, I would change the blade before I start, because cherry is a little bit more demanding for the scroll saw, so I find a good sharp blade is necessary for cutting this wood. The wood thickness can also play a significant role in how your scroll saw performs. Very thick woods can cause the project to jump about. You can choose to use a thicker, stronger blade, and this should allow the machine to perform better and reduce the amount of jumping. Thin pieces of wood can cause an equal amount of difficulty. Because of the lower amount of resistance, it can cause the wood to jump about. Very small pieces of wood, they can be demanding too, because they're difficult to grip, and as such, more difficult to clamp down as you are working with your scroll saw. It's also worth spending a little bit of time before you start your project to sand the back of your wood nice and flat. You've got a nice flat surface on the back of your scroll saw project. This allows it to sit flat on the bed reducing the amount of jumping that the wood will do. If you have an uneven surface on the back of your wood, this is one of the leading causes of the wood jumping about. So before you start, sand your wood nice and flat on the back so it sits on the scroll saw bed nice and evenly. The next aspect to look at when we're dealing with jumping woods are technical issues. So the first one is feed speed. Are you feeding the wood through your scroll saw too quickly? If you try to force a machine, it will jump about and it will not perform to its best. We use a simple rule here at our family workshop. When you're working with any saw, right the way through from coping saws and hand saws, to scroll saws, to circular saws, let the blade do the work. Relax it and allow it to do the work for you. When it comes to technique, a technique that we use and that I suggest is to hold the piece down, flat on the bed with your one hand and to feed it with the other hand. With the scroll saw, if you do not use some form of clamp, as in your hand or an external aid to clamp the wood down, it will jump about. You can't just use both hands to feed the machine, you have to secure it down to prevent jumping. So that is something then that you can look at, is technique. If you're just feeding the wood through the blade without actually clamping it down in some form, this will cause the wood to jump. Another aspect when it comes to technique is fatigue. So as you're scroll sawing, and again specifically for beginners, as you're getting used to working with the scroll saw, you will find that as you get tired, your ability to hold the wood down will be reduced. So what you can do is to do a little bit of work, turn the machine off, let your hands and arms have a little rest, clamp it back down, and off you go again. So fatigue is an aspect that can cause the wood to jump about as you are cutting it. Following on from there, as mentioned, we use a Hegner Multicut 2S. So this particular scroll saw, one attachment that Hegner have provided is an arm to hold the wood down. So if you find it difficult to use your hand as a clamp, you can buy that accessory and the machine then will clamp the wood down for you. Different systems, different companies will have their own method of clamping the woods, but this is a method then that we do use, is to use an external clamp to hold the wood down. Final element then is practice, confidence, and concentration. So the more you scroll saw, the more you'll improve, the more you'll get used to it, the more you'll get used to your machine, your blade, and your whole approach. You'll learn as you go along. You might try different machines, you might try different blades, and as you do this, you will improve. And you'll learn then what suits yourself and what doesn't. When it comes to confidence, this will develop in time. So the more you do your scroll sawing, the more you will develop your confidence. Concentration comes into it as well. It really follows on from where we mentioned fatigue. The more scroll sawing you're doing in one sitting, after a while you may find that you lose a little bit of concentration, and this can cause a momentary lapse and the wood to jump about. So there you go, those are just some thoughts on different ideas that might be causing the wood to jump about whilst you are scroll sawing. If that's useful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you know when we upload another video. Don't forget, put a comment in the comment section if there are any things that we've forgotten to mention and the things that you intend to have a go at using for your own scroll sawing. And again, thank you all for watching.